We've got the president who's continuing his PR offensive, heading to Michigan to talk to voters today. At the same time, Republicans there at the state capitol are pushing right-to-work measures that would make union membership and union dues voluntary in the private sector in Michigan. Let me bring in Michigan State House Democratic Leader-elect Tim Greimel. Good to see you. Thank you so much for being with us, Representative.
Great to be on the show. Thanks for having me, Christine.
Now, to be honest, you're up against a Republican House, a Republican Senate. Republican Governor Rick Snyder has changed his position. He now supports right to work. So what are your chances of stopping it?
Well, I don't think our chances of stopping it legislatively are particularly good. You know, it's a remarkable thing where we have a governor who campaigned as a moderate, who has said for over 2 years that this issue is too divisive for Michigan. And now he's its biggest fan. So either he was lying when he called it too divisive, or he is, by his own admission, an extremist who's pushing an agenda that's too divisive and too extreme for our state.
Well, right now, as I understand it, the entire Michigan federal delegation, House and Senate, those folks are meeting with Governor Snyder. Could that change anything?
Well, I have heard that they're meeting with him. We'll have to see in what comes of that discussion.
Well, let me play devil's advocate here and just talk about the specifics of this. Supporters say that this is going to help the state attract and keep businesses, and they often point to auto suppliers, for example. Are they right about that?
No, they're not, Christine. And let me just correct something that you said in your introductory remarks when you said that the proposed law would make union membership and union dues voluntary. Union membership and union dues are already voluntary. It has been illegal in the United States for over 60 years to compel anyone to join a union. Currently, in Michigan and most other states, if people do not join a union and do not pay union dues, yet are covered by a collective bargaining agreement and benefit from higher wages, higher benefits, and better working conditions under that collective bargaining agreement, they must either be a union member or they must pay what's called an agency fee simply to cover the administrative cost of administering that collective bargaining agreement. What this law would do is it would allow those individuals who benefit from a collective bargaining agreement to avoid paying their fair share. And that's why I don't call this right to work. I call it a freedom to freeload law.
So you already would be joining, I think, 23 other states that have right to work in place. There was a Heritage Foundation study that found union membership fell by 15% in states that passed right to work. Another study from the Economic Policy Institute reports that wages fell by more than 3% under right to work, although that was less than some opponents had predicted. What do you think the impact in Michigan would be?
I think the impact in Michigan is going to be the same that we've seen in all of the other states that have passed this terrible legislation, and that is we're going to see wages decline, we're going to see good benefits decline, we're going to see workplaces become less safe. The fact is that this has not been good for economic growth in any of the states that have enacted right-to-work laws. They have unemployment rates that are as high or higher than Michigan's. Pushing right to work is the surest path to poverty that anybody could pursue here in Michigan.
Well, there were some pretty big demonstrations last Thursday at the state capitol to protest this, kind of reminiscent of what we saw in Wisconsin and Ohio when those states voted on these union issues. What are you expecting tomorrow? What's your prediction?
I think we're going to see thousands and thousands of people here in Lansing who are protesting not just about the substance of this terrible legislation of so-called right to work, but they're also very upset, and rightfully so, about the lack of process and the lack of transparency that we've seen. You know, the governor said last week that he wants thoughtful discussion about this. About a day later, he decided that he was going to ram this through the legislature. They have done so by suspending the normal rules so that this matter does not need to go through the normal committee process. As a result, there's no opportunity for public input, and they voted to discharge it from committee without any committee hearings, and within 90 minutes, it was passed on the floor of the State House. That is the opposite of democratic transparency. It's the opposite of any meaningful discussion or deliberative process, and it's really a slap in the face to democracy to do this during the waning hours of lame duck when they're depending on the votes of people who just lost their election in November because their extremist agenda was rejected by voters. And they know that they have to do it now. They have to depend on those people who just lost votes because it's those people who won't be able to be held accountable by the voters in the future because they're going to be gone by the end of this year.
Representative Greimel, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you, Christine.
You know, we were